Hello.
Oh, welcome to live. This is your first live, right?
With Beaver Politics, absolute. Well, I've done live a few times, but Charity does most of the work with the lives. How are you?
I'm well. I heard you were going to talk about Vulcans.
I am, and it's 6 o'clock. I am stoked to talk to everybody about the Vulcan state of mind. Radical, I don't know if anybody's familiar with the radical atheist, but it's a passion of his right now to start talking to youth. And one of the things we're talking about right now, we had some big conversations today and last night, is trying to get us to stop thinking tribalism is really important. First of all, I want to say that there's nothing wrong with tribalism. But I think that we've got to think about our tribes and our people, but then in an overall layer, we have to start thinking in a Vulcan state of mind with less emotion. What do you think of that?
I'm reminded of a paper that somebody wrote in my master's class at Vincent's University that covered this. Actually, it was a parallel between the Vulcan state of mind or a philosophy of absolute logic, which was Stoicism, which was done by Zeno in Rome. The biggest person that we might know, that most people would know from history, that was a student of this philosophy would be Marcus Aurelius. It didn't work well.
Tell
Humans
me.
are humans are emotional beings, and when you try to use a sense of stoic pure logic and ignore the emotion, you lose the crowd. And that's very prevalent, and leading into the segue of your other topic of politics. Politics is 90% emotional baiting. Logic only goes so far. People want to feel something for their favorite candidate.
Yeah. I don't know. I think we get so emotional right now. Like Radical and I were talking about I made a joke and I said Vulcans, I wonder if Vulcans and autism are kind of similar, right? And he said that the amygdalas would be a lot smaller in Vulcans and wouldn't shake as harder because they aren't as emotional, right? So we could think clear to that logical piece.
Yes, except that emotions are far more prevalent in the Vulcans. They just learn uh, through the process of Kolinar to suppress them according to the teachings of Sarek.
And Spock was only half Vulcan, right?
Yes, he had a human mother.
He had a human mother, and I believe he really had a struggle with accepting that piece of being, human.
Yes, he rejected the Kolinar in the Star Trek movies.
Why do you do that?
It doesn't really cover it. I think it was because he realized that he felt something for his friends, specifically Captain Kirk, for the sake of the movie. But I think there was a big part of him that realized that his human side, if he completely ignored it, he would lose a part of himself.
Exactly. Exactly. They did kind of cover it a little bit. He actually realized that he needed that piece to be him. He kind of accepted that piece. It was an internal struggle, but also an acceptance of who he was, right?
And then I think he found a certain level of peace once he learned to be authentic to himself.
I think you're right. I think you're right. Do you want to talk about the chakra a little bit more? Did
I
I say?
don't I don't know chakras. That's a little different. I don't know. I mean, I know of the chakras, I know of the
Yeah.
points, but I'm not familiar enough with it to speak on it. Perhaps someone else could.
If Nerdy wants to. Did I say it wrong? Shock. Shrock.
Oh, Surak.
Sirac. There we go. Thank you
Surak.
very much. Yes, because you were speaking about it in the comment section earlier.
Yes, Surak in Vulcan history was the Vulcan who decided to help end the horrible wars and atrocities on Vulcan by convincing Vulcans to suppress their passions and turn to logic as a way of guiding forward while still accepting diversity in the Vulcan people.
Yeah. The Star Trek was fascinating, right? Like Gene Roddenberry was such a odd man, but that he could kind of create all of these characters is just amazing. So yeah, Radical has been talking a lot, and he was thinking that maybe we need to kind of pull some emotion back. Charity says, get us to 20 likes. Tapping is clapping. Sharing is caring. Get it out there. So talking about pulling back a little bit less and thinking with logic. Anybody have any thoughts around that? Grandma Sandy?
Well, if I may, um, I truly think we can never abandon our emotions entirely. Um, I'm saying this because I've pulled back a lot emotionally from politics and have been looking at them in a more factual sense and doing a lot more research
Mm-hmm.
without letting my emotions bias me. Does that make sense?
Yeah. And how's that been different?
I'm old. I have always basically voted for the same party.
Mm-hmm.
And this year I realized I have to shut down a little bit, do the research, come up with my own who I'm going to vote for. Now, granted, ABC's like not part of anything in my life, but I've been thinking a lot about split voting. I've been thinking a lot about um, the best, how to strategize better. There's just so much this year that didn't come into play a lot of other years. And to me, this is going to be a vote that changes history.
I think you're
So
right.
I want to be exceptionally careful. Now, this afternoon, I had a very interesting conversation with a young man who happens to be 25. And I was with another gentleman. And the gentleman I was with is totally conservative. I'm not. The 25-year-old is more impressed normally with what this gentleman says, but was able to say he's not sure. He's 100% mixed up. He hears, what he's hearing is on overload. And he doesn't know how to pick out the misinformation. And I found it a quite interesting conversation because he wasn't the type of young man that you could just put something in his head and he's going to go for it.
Okay.
He's a young man who's going to I know
Oh,
of
yeah.
a is doing his research tonight.
Grandma Sadie, you cut out for me. Oh, you're on one bar. Um, could you repeat that last sentence?
Thanks, Polly.
Okay, what do you think about bombardment? Know what was true, what wasn't true. But he also wouldn't let anyone sway his opinion on who to vote for. And I thought, good for you. You're going to make up your own mind, do your own research.
Excellent. Can you move closer to your modem? Do you want to try that, Grandma Sandy? Thanks for the gifts, everyone. We really
Am
appreciate
I
it.
not being heard? Seriously?
Now you are. We noticed you were missing a bar. You were down with your internet, and Charity said that if you move closer to your modem, that would probably fix the problem. And you sound pretty clear now.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah, you sound really good now. So that young man, you guys had a conversation. He's a little overwhelmed with all the information, but now he's going home to do his research.
Yes, he was very interested in what we both had to say,
Mm-hmm.
but he wasn't going to commit just because he was more influenced by the gentleman I was with.
And how was he
He
more?
was open to what each of us had to say,
Oh,
which I
okay.
found pretty good.
Excellent, excellent. And
So I guess what my point is I don't think most of the young people are just jumping on board with whoever tells, like if their father tells them to vote so and so, they're going to do that. I'm not finding that at all.
That's awesome. And I'm really hoping that. I mean, we have some strong minds in Canada and we have a great education system. So I'm really hoping that, our youth are really paying attention. I know my daughter said, I'm going to get one of my friends to watch this with us tonight because he keeps getting fired because he can't shut up because he's feels as passionate as you guys do. That kind of excited me. Not the
Excellent.
exciting part, but just the passion part. And he's like 22, 23. And we need more of that. Because let's face it, the Convoy, Mega, that group, they played the long game really well.
Yes, they certainly did.
Really, really well. And they've been playing it for many, many years. And kids have been getting turned in charter classrooms across Canada and in churches and back rooms and all of these things, right? We didn't really understand what was going on. They've played the long game.
That's what surprised me this afternoon because I was fully expecting him to say something else, and he didn't. And then he was open to a conversation with two people on opposite ends, just gently giving our perspective or facts. And we use Siri a lot, and it was very interesting. But he still walked away saying, "Nope, not making up my mind yet."
That's kind of a good thing, right?
I think so.
so much information to process, and it's coming out at the speed of sound. Misha said she had one thing she wanted to share with us. Go
Yeah,
ahead. There's another factor.
there's another factor in the politics of America, which goes back to 2020 when I ran for the House of Representatives in District 168 in my state. And when I aligned with the Democrat Party on an official level, I went as a candidate to the National Democratic Training Center in Macon, which is a convention where you talk to other candidates in your party. One of the most horrifying things running my first expensive campaign was for the Democrat Party to say, we will not be contributing to any campaigns in this primary on a non presidential year. They were fundraising for the 2024. And in the process of not supporting the Democrat candidates in 2020 financially with the party's big money, the House and the Senate flipped. The Republican Party started picking up momentum, especially in the swing states. And I think having that 2 year hold and wait and try uh, to step in and shark it at the last minute like we do on TikTok battles was a very poor strategy for the Democrat Party in the US. They should have like MAGA ran the long race all the way from the election forward. They had made momentum, they had swung key states, they turned Georgia blue, and then they were like, let's take a 2 year breather and pick up in 2023 while the Republican Party, you know, threatened with the loss of the House and the Senate or having a balanced Senate, really pushed to start planting the seeds and putting canvassers and door knockers and campaigns in those battleground states. And as you can see, a lot of the battleground states that were typically blue in this election went red. And I think it's because the Democrat Party didn't play that long game.
Because of that long game, they didn't play the long game piece. I gotta agree with you. They didn't play the long game, and I don't think they fought hard enough. Like, I think, like, I mean, they did amazing things financially. They put lots of things in place, but I mean, enshrining women's rights would have been an amazing thing. Adding
But
maybe more.
when they had the House, the Senate, and the presidency,
Yeah,
they had the opportunity to do it. They
yeah.
didn't because it's so much of their funding base that if
Mhm.
they actually had codified Roe versus Wade into federal law, their fear was we wouldn't have anything to run on. So by intentionally fumbling the ball, they lost the game.
Yeah, I totally agree. There's so many strength moves they could have taken, and I feel like they had too many fears.
Um, that
Go ahead.
what happened in Canada too. Like Trudeau and Jagmeet Singh working together could have had a wonderful opportunity to do election reform, and now we're stuck.
Agreed.
Yeah, like they could have done it. They with the power that they just had, they um, totally could have looked at election reform. And now what are we going to do? Now what are we faced with?
Yeah, it's kind of scary, right? Like, I really expected. Here's the things I would have liked to have seen with Justin and Jagmeet would have been electoral reform. I like the dental piece. I also would have liked to have seen, you know, the Liberal Party has been propped up for a long time by NDP. It would have been nice to see, and I know this is like a Hollywood dream or something or a movie, but like, let's make room for the NDP. Make room for the NDP to start to come into leadership. Justin Trudeau did good things, but not enough. We needed that housing and we needed it fast. And we needed it almost like the moment he came into power.
Yeah, I think like the wartime housing would have been a good idea if they would have actually followed through with the wartime, with the way they did it in wartime to get people housing.
Yeah, 100%. I totally agree with you. We could have done housing quicker. I think he did pretty decently navigating COVID, but again, because he didn't nail down that housing piece in the beginning, of his time in office, it just nagged him all the way through. I think also too, allowing the convoy to go as long and as hard as he did, I think trying to show that he's liberal and he's not a dictator really went against him too.
How many dictators do you know that actually step down? Just wondering, asking for a friend, how many dictators and traitors step down from government?
Right? It's amazing. It's amazing that people call him a dictator. But I think like letting it go, like allowing rebel media to have a home in Canada, I think was a huge problem. I think it really affected him. Like they ruined his brand, his name.
They need to go live somewhere like where, and I'm not saying people need to leave Canada, but even just go visit and a place that, um, you know, that you guys know what I'm trying to say. I'm having brain freeze. Sorry.
Yeah. Yeah, I totally agree with you. Pumpkin spice latte is talking about, sorry, I think too many politicians own rental units. And we're learning now that there's a fix in Canada that politicians and very wealthy people that bought up apartment blocks and streets and small communities when prices were low found it a fix to keep, a good idea to keep people unhoused, to keep their rents up high.
Also, pumpkin spice latte. Why am I having a hard time saying that? Um, you're right about the social housing. Like, that's how it was when I was a single mother on social assistance, working part time. Um, I lived in Edmonton. They had Edmonton housing, they had Alberta housing, so it was provincial and municipal housing. There was abundance of it. Like, there was a lot of the housing. And I would get, so when they gave you housing, you had to have a separate bedroom for your child or children. So they would give you bedrooms as to how many people or a couple. So you would get like a 3 bedroom or a 2 bedroom. It was based on how many people were in the family. And I paid 30% of my income. So if I made $1,000, my rent was $300 always. And then every year they would go and you put in your pay stubs or your income, and then they would reassess based on what you were making. I don't even know if there was a limit, actually. I don't know if you could make too much, like if you got raises at your job or whatever, but a lot of people use that as a platform to save money to buy houses, right? So they paid little rent, and they were able to save because it wasn't just for people who were on social assistance or disability. It was for people who were working too. And then they would save their money and buy houses. That was like the plan. When I was young, that was the plan. Get into social housing, save money, and buy your own house.
That's and a great plan it was, right? And now we've got all of these youth that don't have homes to move into. We they
All of those
don't
all
they
of those
can't
houses were
afford.
sold off. I don't know who
Yeah.
did it. I
Yeah,
wasn't
it,
party.
it
I wasn't.
started with Brian Mulroney when he decided to sell off, like, I think it was like 200,000 units of non-market social housing. And then I can't remember if it's Paul Martin or Jacques Chrétien who got it first, but both of them also sold off the remaining assets that we had. And then they all began to start doing this whole neoliberalism thing because, it was all the rage ever since Reagan invented it. Except nothing ever trickled down. And then, well, Harper just kind of worked into making that situation worse in and of itself.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, honestly, Justin Trudeau just didn't do anything to fix it. It's not really that he did anything to cause the problem.
He didn't. I was reading an article that when you work on creating change, it takes 9 years to see that change come through. So if Justin Trudeau had have started working on housing the second he went into office, then we would be seeing those changes now. We would be feeling those changes now.
Yeah, it's an issue, and it's really frustrating. And I feel like the liberals, they still do this, right? They still give tax breaks to like the oil giants and whatnot. I don't see what for, because again, aren't they supposed to be paying carbon tax and all this shit? Like, why are we rewarding that? But whatever. It's been quite frustrating, but you know, I've been looking at it, right? And so like when we went through the like process and we got into like the whole neoliberalism and the laissez-faire sort of free market talk and whatnot. But before that, the economic policies that they were using was something called Keynesianism. Keynesianism, I think something like that.
Say it
And
again.
Keyn Keynesianism,
Okay.
or Keynesian economics specifically.
Okay.
So I've been looking into it a little bit, and it's all about regulating your market and making sure that there's less inequalities in your society. So basically, if we could go back to that, that would be really, really nice. I looked into it, and I think, look, I'm an NDP girl, but I feel like if Carney ends up being the stand-in, he doesn't believe in trickle down. I don't think that that would be his approach. So I don't know. I'm feeling a
Trickle
little
down
bit
strategy.
Just before I leave, Carney is actually an advocate of UBI.
yeah, I know. I looked into him and I was like, okay, like he seems more radical than the NDP. Like
He's
I honestly could get
actually
behind
more
this guy.
he actually is more progressive than Trudeau, but he's also very what's the word I'm looking for here? Humble,
Fiscally responsible?
fiscally responsible, and like he doesn't make a big deal. Like he doesn't market himself necessarily as progressive. He tries to tackle everything from an economic perspective. And I gotta go soon, but I just want to let you guys know I've been looking for a place to actually pick up his paperback book called Values that he wrote in 2021. There's a new one coming out this year, but it's on pre-order right now, and it's actually about like how to save Canada. But I am gonna pick up that 2021 book when I can find it at a little local bookstore, and I know I'll be able to find it probably within the next week. Then I'm gonna read it, and I'll do an entire series on my channel summarizing each chapter because it's a 304-page book. I don't really feel like a lot of people are going to have the patience to read it, but people will have the patience to watch tiny little TikTok videos that summarize it for them. So that'll at least
Absolutely.
help help people understand who he is a little bit more, right? Because a lot of people don't know. But this dude helped us out in the recession back in 2008. He helped UK to deal with Brexit. Like, there's some really good stuff there.
Question. Friend
But
line, didn't Carney like work for Harper or work with the Harper government too?
he did,
He was the
yes.
governor of the Bank of
So
Canada
he,
at the time, wasn't he?
Yes. And he was
He was
praised by
managing the
Harper.
housing
He was
crisis.
praised by Harper for the help.
okay, just making sure. Just
Oh,
getting
like, I
ready.
mean, I don't know this, that he was like in cahoots with Harper so much as he was like
But
No, no,
just
no.
doing a
He
I gotta
job.
I
was.
gotta let you guys go. I got a meeting starting in a minute. I'd love to be more part of this conversation, but we'll touch on these things tomorrow in our tomorrow's show.
Okay,
Much
sounds
love,
good.
everybody.
Take
Bye.
care. Thanks for popping up.
Bye.
The problem is that a lot of people don't know or don't remember that those programs existed in the past and they were taken away. And
Yeah.
so
So
they should
like,
come back. Like we
you
need them
really,
back.
really should. When Jean Chrétien said we need to go back to the radical center, my brain was like, I know that he doesn't mean what I'm hearing, but I agree with him that they do need to go back to the center because they've been like center right for ages. And they've been doing this whole neoliberalism thing where they believe in trickle down economics. And it's like, guys, you can't just trickle. It never does. Stop doing the free market thing. Like, let's go back to like regulating the industries and having the non-market social housing. And
Yeah.
Canada will
Yeah.
be in a much better place. And honestly, I think that at that point, maybe we don't make buildings. Maybe we just buy them. It would be
Interesting.
real fast. You buy a building.
Yeah,
That's
there's a lot
non-market
of empty
housing
Well,
now.
buildings.
BC Housing is doing that right now. Um, I can't say how I know, but I know. BC Housing is buying up like motel buildings, anything that they can put people in, anything that has the right bylaws to set up for people. So I think that's happening, but I see in my small community that even though they're doing that, we still need housing built.
Hmm. Yeah, that may be. You're in BC, are you?
Yeah, I'm in BC. I'm in the Kootenays.
Because I was like, I don't know of any progressive governments that are close to me, so
Okay,
you must
where?
be on the complete other side of Canada. I'm in Quebec.
Ah, there you go.
I was like, either you're in Manitoba or you're in BC.
Yeah, in BC. And so that's how the NDP government is working at it, is buying old motels and stuff like that and fixing them up and offering housing to different groups.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, it is really
Absolutely.
cool.
That is the thing to do. But
Right
yeah, no, in
now,
BC, you guys have a lot of people. I think like you probably have one of the most densest populations of any province, right?
yeah, we're I don't actually have the exact stats right now for how big, but we are very big. I mean, even in my small town, we never even had a homeless community. Now we're at like I would say probably at least 1,400 when we did our last census count for homeless.
Yeah, no, that's rough.
And that's buildings burning down that those houses haven't been replaced. It's for a lot of different reasons. We have homeless people. What are our homeless makeup? Seniors, a lot of seniors, users, special needs. Um, like students. We also have a lot of people fleeing Alberta, young people.
That actually makes a lot of sense because Alberta is not a safe place for a lot of people right now.
I had a young man tell me he just got here recently and he said that he had to leave because his rent was raised $2,000 and they can do that there. And he just didn't see a way to survive.
That's rough. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Which is inspiring, this generation next and these conversations we have to start having with our youth and about our youth, focusing in on them a little bit more so they're not those basement dwellers.
Well,
They
I
want
mean,
to.
from what I can understand in your province specifically, there's a lot more people willing to go and vote for the Green Party, which is really cool. Because out here in Quebec, it's like impossible to get anybody in the Green Party. It
Yeah.
doesn't happen. If anybody votes for anything that's not the Liberals or the NDP, it goes block. Like we never have an issue of it splitting onto a conservative because it will always just split to the block.
And isn't the block kind of leaning? I think we had Billy on, boy, geez, about 6 months ago, and she talked to us about the block being kind of more liberal leaning.
They are more liberal leaning, but they also tend to be willing to play ball with almost anybody who's willing to pass laws that they want to pass. So if they can get, and as somebody who does not want to separate from Canada, that's always a scary position that I feel. But they just try to make Canada a little bit more like Quebec every time. Like,
Yeah.
I feel that Ontario is catching up to BC in the higher market value, the like our housing is terrible. There's houseless everywhere. And I live in an exceptionally small town,
Mm.
extremely rural. We don't even have a convenience store or gas station, so that explains it, right?
Mm-hmm.
And
That's
yet
rough. Yeah.
we have to go to a town over just to get gas, whatever. But what I'm trying to point out is we have houseless people here because, um, I mean, there's rumors going around that Toronto is busing people up into the rural areas. Now, I have not found research backing that up, but locals, we know who's new, and they're houseless. And I live in the snow belt where, like, today was minus 20.
Mm-hmm.
And these people are, they're barely existing.
Yeah, that's
And I just find it heartbreaking.
it is heartbreaking. Honestly, I'm wondering how they're able to fare in that kind of situation because that is really, really tough. Like I mean, I come from like a small farming area. Like my grandparents are in like a remote mountain that's filled with farmers, and like when th that kind of thing was like people would be like sleeping in other people's barns at that point because like it was the only way to get safe if you were homeless.
Oh,
Like, is there anything in your community that the municipality is doing or at all for these people? I'm just curious because like that's very scary stuff, especially when there's no resources.
in my community, the municipality is working. We've got BC Housing working with us. We are working really hard. We call them community partners. We've got Interior Health out there. But I don't think all communities right now, I mean, basically, you have to have a political will to get a lot of these things moving. And if there's
Yeah,
not
no,
a
for sure.
political will, it's not happening, right? It's just not happening. There's people like Goldfinger in the comments, or AKA Jimmy GTO, who will tell you things like there's buses coming in and they're bringing droves of people into your community. And that's just not true. I get people coming to my shelter all the time, and making that same statement. But the thing is that bus is full of senior citizens coming from a small town to get some ice cream from Dairy Queen.
Yeah,
It's not a bus coming in, and that's a common misconception that those left wingers are spreading around everywhere. Or, sorry, not left wingers, right wingers, or people that just chaos makers really are
yeah.
putting that out there, and it's just not true.
That's why I said I had no fact for that statement. I can't find anything to back it up. But what I do know is our town is starting to not allow new Airbnbs. They're
That's good.
very quickly revoking Airbnb licenses for too many police calls or whatever the case may be, because this community um, is getting elderly. And I guess a lot of people are also complaining about the parties and noise, the bylaw infractions, et cetera, et cetera. But they're also realizing by allowing all these Airbnbs and whatever the other ones are called into our community, they have caused a houseless problem. So
Yeah, no, because
Uh,
if they're always empty because of the fact that they're trying to like get clients, then nobody can live in that place, and that's not okay. Honestly,
And
it's a
that's
problem here in Quebec as well. Like I have a cousin who owns a cottage that she just rents out. Like, I mean, I would love to be able to own a house ever. I I honestly feel like it's insulting that she only rents it out.
It really is insulting. It's a hard thing. I live in a community where a lot of people come to travel to ski. So we have a huge problem with that. Lots of people come to vacation in the summer, so those Airbnbs are held. And we've got a big homeless population. I also don't see churches doing the kind of work that they used to be involved in doing. So that disturbs me a little bit as well. Um, and, I was very impressed with the NDP and the work they're doing to kind of cut back on the Airbnbs. I don't think a lot of people intended to create the problem with Airbnbs, but when once you start getting that money and you start doing it, it's hard to give up, right?
Hmm. Something that's really frustrating in Quebec is that recently they made a new law change where you can't transfer a lease to another person, which was something that we used to be able to do. Say you wanted to get out of your lease early, you could transfer the lease to the person who would take over your apartment, and then they would get your apartment at your level of
Mhm.
rent. The apartment would just be an apartment that was theirs now, and you would be able to leave and move out. And like this was something that had been done for ages, and then they repealed this law, and now it's not possible to transfer. So if you want to get out of your lease, you can't, not until it expires. Um, and then if you want somebody to move in with you, you're stuck on the lease, and your credit's at risk if somebody like moves in and you want to move out. You know? Because like there is the option to add them onto the lease, but there's not the option to transfer the lease. So then I'm also liable if they don't pay.
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
That's brutal.
it's brutal. It basically it creates a situation in which landlords get to change the terms of the lease as soon as the tenant leaves. They can just
Wow.
do what they want.
I just want to give a quick shout out to Vax here. Hello, thanks for joining us tonight. Appreciate you showing up.
Good evening, ladies. Good evening. I just want to make a couple of points. Number one, if you're waiting and holding your breath for the government of Canada to solve the homelessness issues that we have in this country, um, you're sadly mistaken because the government are the ones who are responsible for the homeless issue to begin with. And when our liberal and conservative government started shutting down all the psychiatric hospitals from coast to coast, they put a whole pile of people out in the streets who couldn't get the daily necessities that they needed to live a life and be part of society. And that was a huge problem. And so I think, and that's a major player in the
I'm nodding
homelessness.
my head too.
Sorry?
I said I'm nodding my head too, like Mrs. Radical.
Facts, because
Yeah. So honestly, like the government
yeah, I
is
agree with Vax
responsible for
because
the position that we are in, and all the little things that they continue to say they're doing, like funding and all the other stuff that they're putting out there. Is the funding really reaching where it's supposed to reach? Is it really being allotted for what it was originally allotted for? So I'm not going to hold my breath that the government is going to solve the problem with homelessness, but I really, really want to make an sort of off-topic statement.
Okay.
17 years ago, I purchased a home. I was talking to, I don't know who the fuck it was down there in the conversation, but I was saying you're actually better off to rent a home and invest the extra money. And people have a really hard time processing that when I say it. Now, I'm going to give you a very straightforward example. I bought a home in Ontario for $275,000 17 years ago. I have invested at least $350,000 to $400,000 into that home. It is now worth around 750 or 800,000. So I'm up 100 grand. Now,
Yeah.
if I was to take the money that I invested into renovating that home and just paid rent and invested it, I'd be up a lot more than just $100,000. What people have a hard time understanding is, like if you go and rent $1 million brand new home right now here in Ontario per se, you pay about $3,000 a month. The mortgage on that $1 million home is closer to five. That's a $2,000 just on the rent to mortgage. Now, with a home, especially when you buy an older home, you have renovations, you have upkeep, your furnace breaks, you need a roof, you want to do the gardening, you add some mulch, the pool needs a new liner, and you take all of that money into consideration. By renting a home and being incredibly diligent about putting every extra penny that you're not putting out as ownership, you'll be further ahead in the long run.
So, I would have agreed with you a while ago on that statement, but so I'll just tell you a little bit about my family. When Radical and I had our kids, we got our daughter had liver disease and our son had autism. So our funds had to be diverted really quickly. And we were okay with that. We were okay with becoming lifelong renters, even paying a little bit more to have live in a better quality neighborhood, make sure our kids were growing up. But we found that we were always terrified of losing our property when we were renting. You're at the mercy of a landlord, and it's not always a good thing. The last house we lived in, I paid very, very good money for. They were great landlords, but in a housing crisis, they're going to take care of their kids first. And when their daughter graduated university, I received an evacuation, or not. I received a request to leave. What do you call that?
Eviction?
Thank you. Sorry, I lost the word there. I received an eviction. It's nothing personal, but I was forced into buying like a $500,000 house so that we had housing security because there was nothing out here.
Excuse me.
I
The thing
think
about
also, oh, sorry.
No, that's okay, Polycheck. I just think that a lot of people, right, like we're not necessarily, I'm talking long term full circle here. I know and I understand the market right now. Anybody who knows me knows that's the business I'm in, right? I know a hell of a lot about the market and I understand it right now. And yes, it's unfortunate that the cost of living has gone through the roof and there's so many variables. And right now your house might be worth $1 million, you bought it for 980 and it's going up, but maybe in 3 years we're going to see like a recession or a depression. Your house isn't going to be worth shit, right? So what ended up happening is a whole bunch of people went out and the banks were offering us all 1.75, and all these, people went out and extended their credit, purchased a whole pile of stuff, and didn't understand that what was going to happen was the banks were going to be like, oh, well, now that we've lent out trillions of dollars, we're going to jack up the interest rates and we're going to screw all you people over. So I'm not necessarily talking about what's transpiring right now with the economy. I'm talking about long term. I personally, if I had of 17 years ago rented a home at the time for about $1,200 a month, and invested the 350 or 400,000 that I have into my home into, something else, I would be much further ahead than I am with the purchase and upkeep of the home that I've had for the last 15 years. This is long term. This isn't like just right now.
Yeah, that makes complete sense. It was Radical Mike. Radical Mike. I'm just wondering if Radical Mike is understanding what you're saying, because you're right.
Yeah, this isn't like a Rad Mike. That's right. So even right now, if I was to go and purchase a new home here in southwestern Ontario, and just first home buyer, $1 million home, my mortgage is going to be like $5 or $6 grand a month. I can go and rent a brand new home in southwestern Ontario or $3,000 a month. So they're not equal. I don't know what it's like all across the board from coast to coast, but I can tell you in Ontario, the business in the area that I know and I understand, that it's way more expensive mortgage wise to own a brand new home than it is to rent a brand new home. And if you buy an older home that you can afford, like a lot of us did when we were 30, right? We bought what we could afford, and those homes needed to be repaired and fixed and upgraded and renovated. And not just the things that you wanted to do to the house, but the things that needed to be done to the home.
Yeah, but in today's market, those houses are like 500K and you still have to do stuff to them.
Oh,
Yeah, so I
And
100%.
think
they're run down and they're in need of excessive renovations to make them look good.
100%. I totally agree 100%. You can go buy
Like this is not something that like me and my husband can afford, as an example. Like it's not a feasible solution. And honestly, we do need to get rid of the Airbnb situations just so that more houses are vacant because there's a lot of vacant places here.
yeah.
But
Yeah, we need to
yeah,
get rid of Airbnbs. We need to make spaces where, tiny homes can be.
yeah, not and we do need to have like non-market social housing. We need to reinvest in that because that is something that is needed in Canada.
Yeah, we have to bring that back because that
And
helped a lot of people. And I mean, it helped me. I was a single mom. I worked part time. I could only work part time. I was on partial assistance and I had a townhouse with rooms for my kids. And, I paid 30% of my income, which was doable. And it left me with a little bit that I could save, which is what everybody needs. They need room to save, even little bits it helps.
and going right back to what I said, Chick, like there used to be all these things that were in play that the government took away from us, and now they're dangling a carrot in front of us, saying, "Oh, we're going to solve the problem," which we created in the first place, right? Like they took away all these programs and all the funding, and now they're like, "Oh, we're going to give you some funding." No, we had the funding, but you took it all away, and now you want to dangle a carrot in front of us again, right?
but the funding was taken away in the 80s, right? So like I mean, it's been a long time. Anybody who's in politics right now isn't responsible for the current housing crisis.
None. And
Social programs get cut all the time, and
I'm
then
saying non-market social housing got began being sold off in 1980s, and then it continued under the liberal governments as well. And then like it just we don't have non-market social housing on a federal level anymore at all. We have some small amounts on a provincial level. Certain municipalities have them as well, but it's not it's not like the current governing body, the current government today. It's not entirely their fault. I'm not saying that they don't have some blame. I blame the CAC for changing the laws that they recently changed that have fucked our rental market. But like, you know, the federal government has invested in new housing. That's like they did do
they did.
that.
Just step down because I suspect that there's a couple more people that might want up. So I'm
Yeah.
going to go eat dinner. I'm going to step down, but I will be listening. Thanks for having me up. If you need
Thanks
me
for
up again,
coming
I'll come
in.
up.
I appreciate
Now,
you. Thank you both.
What I would argue is that I have a question as to whether or not like when it comes to housing, which is a human right, why we are using it as an investment. Housing is a human right in Canada. Why are we investing in housing? It should
Great
not be
question.
something that people are putting money into as an investment because it is a human right. Humans are supposed to live in those houses. Why are we having foreign entities buying up and corporates as well, buying up houses and making a profit off of it when it's
It
supposed to
should
be a human right?
it should be illegal really for corporations to be buying houses, and I feel like it should be almost illegal to own more than one or two houses per family. Like, you should be able to buy what you need.
Yeah.
And that's it.
That would make sense in a world of equality. But the
I think
unfortunate
that we
part,
all strive for one, do we not?
yeah,
I
I
mean,
don't.
you work in you work in the market of houses, so probably you don't strive for that. But
I renovate, I build, and I do additions. Like, and I am connected to everything from mortgage lenders to real estate agents to the people who invest in these properties. And unfortunately, we can't. I know. It sounds like it might be an answer to take away the availability to invest into, but when somebody comes in from, say, Toronto, and I'm not saying out of country like Dubai, because I've renovated some homes for some people from Dubai here in Ontario. But anyways, if people come in from Toronto and purchase a house, um, yes, they're going to get a higher market rental rate at this point in time, but they're investing into the local construction workers, the renovators, the property management company, right? Like, so there are some pros to go with the cons. Excuse me. I don't know if they weigh each other out, but there are some pros that go with the cons.
Welcome, Happy.
Hey, how are you? Sorry, I double tapped the mute button there. How's everybody
Don't
doing
ask me
this
any
evening?
hard questions.
It's a
Hard
beautiful day
questions.
here in Ottawa for many of us. So it's a good mood day. I love the topic. Housing is critical. It should be a top priority for all three parties. If any of the four parties, any of the parties don't have a housing plan for affordable housing and socialized and federally supported housing, then I would not support that party. Then it becomes a lesser of all evils. I love the conversation about human rights. That's one of the things that I am most passionate about in conversations. And like two, there's been some very close friends of mine who have passed as unhoused people with addiction issues. So that's why I speak about those most often. But I think like we have to tread kind of lightly when you're talking about controlling free market and when you're talking about government, you know, controlling what people can or cannot buy through like restrictions as opposed to regulations. And I think when you incentivize people to not buy things because they can, I think that gives more power to the person to make the right choice. So I've seen tax systems which increase your tax responsibility or whatever, your tax burden. So every time you buy a house, your tax burden goes up on each house. And then by the end of it, like let's say six houses, whatever, just throwing out a number. I think the actual number was like 12. But like let's say you own six houses, you're then taxed at like 100%, right? 100% on the revenue or whatever for that property. Which then people are less likely to buy them, right? To rent them out. They're more like, you know, just a way, right? Like, so, and I think like the federal government should use the military to build, like tiny homes. I saw a tiny home today. It was $22,000, which means 100 of them is $2,200,000, which means 1,000 is $22 million. And think of how many of these how many of these programs literally piss away $22 million on trial and error. Like
yeah,
you could build, and encampments is a bad word. Villages, communities. You could build communities
communities,
based
yeah.
around, the fundamental needs of individuals for less than that. And so you take a fraction of the spending that we have on police in each major city and shift it over. You know, I don't know. I think that's where we need to start exploring because then that gives people the choice to do the right thing instead of like
Yeah, no, that's I love that point, Happy.
not work
I love
camps. See,
it.
like people always try to do that and they say work camps, it's not about work camps. And I think California had a pilot project, and it's like, okay, here's some social housing. You have 3 years to get your shit together, 5 years to get your shit together, and then you're gone. That's a very reductive way of saying it, and that
BC
felt heartless.
housing
Yeah, no, like because
is
housing is supposed to be a right. So like I mean if you have a lease there, you have a lease there and until your lease expire, well no, like until you decide you want to move, you can live
Yeah.
there, right? That
Is
should
the
be the rule.
implication, Butters? Can I ask you a question? Only because I don't know the answer. Did the implication of taxation with the people who have multiple properties, is that something that was more recently
Yeah.
applied,
Yeah,
or
no,
what?
it was in Germany that they were talking about it. Now with the way the government fell over there, I don't know if that's still a policy or if it got like whatever ascended, but that was what they were talking about in that government. And I think France has a different system too. But yeah, those are all modern systems.
I think we have to have that political will. I live in a small community, and when I went house shopping last year, I'm thinking about my beautiful basement dweller children and looking for a nice property to suit them as well. And one of the things that stood out to me is found a lovely little property, and it had a sea container that was set up, insulated, had a heat system, everything in it that they could have been doing them. Really lovely, but the bylaws wouldn't allow me to do it. Like they were like, yeah, you can use it as a shed.
I think that, Miss Radical, I think that sort of stuff is going to start to change and evolve a little bit. I mean, like I said earlier about the government dangling a carrot, as if they're actually going to do something, but we really don't know if the money that, is being allotted for. Anyway, so I think as we see changes, those are some of the changes we should be able to see where we can start building, multiple units or more units where they weren't allowed to before. And I think it's going to evolve a little bit. I mean, there's got to be a solution to the issue, right? And that's one right there, a very easy and simple solution.
BC's starting that process right now with the NDP government. I believe they had something in the works where homeowners can build a tiny unit in their backyard,
Yeah, they
and the
cut that off.
NDP government will loan a little bit of money
Yeah, I think
towards
they
that.
cut that off
Oh,
because
did they?
I think now it sounds weird and unthought, but like there's a septic system that needs to be considered. There's all sorts of sewage and
Oh,
and grid commitments and stuff like that have to be considered before you can just add people or housing to your
right.
area. But like, I mean, I don't necessarily agree with that, but that was the argument. In BC they have alleyways, don't they? Like alleys in the back.
Some places
Is
do
that the
not.
one? And then they started building granny houses, or that's what granny suites in the
Yeah,
back, right?
yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah.
That's because that's what I want to do with for my mother, as well. But yeah, like it doesn't. Anyways, yeah, absolutely.
Well, another solution would be, I don't like, I can't speak for every city or every province, but where I live, a lot of the old factories like Ford, for instance, in Talbotville, McCormick's in London, like there's so many of these old buildings. Now, I know that it would be an extensive upgrade and repair, but it would also generate money into the economy with the people like myself who do that kind of work.
Yep.
Those old buildings could be renovated, fixed up, cleaned up, and offered at a reasonable rate
They were talking about
to,
that in Ottawa, dude. They were talking about
well, I
that,
Yeah,
find
that's
it,
brilliant.
but there's asbestos remediation that
Yeah,
costs too
that is
much
an issue.
for those
in a lot of
old
them, yes.
buildings. But you're exactly. It would do nothing but stimulate the economy to employ a bunch of tradespeople to go in and do that, right? But like, do you know any tradespeople that are waiting for jobs?
Uh,
Uh,
no.
So
But I do know.
you'd have to use a military, right? Like, and then it's like, but that could fall under our military. I don't know. Like, there's a million
I
solutions. I
understand.
don't know why they're not doing them. Like,
I
like
get nervous when you talk about it because, like, when I think about the military and you say the military, Pierre Polyev made it so that they could, and other governments actually made it so that they could sell off our military bases to.
I'm 8 minutes from downtown Ottawa. Yeah, Yeah, and Pierre Polyev is not military friendly. It's kind of wild that he's got that backing. Um,
Yeah, no, that is absolutely insane that he has that backing because, like, he's like, yeah, I'm gonna make us a strong military that's like not woke, and I'm like, okay, you have
not
to
woke.
acknowledge that women in the army is a good thing. Like, we
you,
learned this in
you,
Afghanistan, guys.
you don't want to be black in the military if Pierre Polyev takes over,
Oh
Oh
my
yeah,
goodness.
right? Like
that's
that's what
scary.
that's where the word woke came from, right? Like so
Like, it just doesn't make any sense.
it
And
doesn't make any
I'm
sense.
so confused by that as well because it's like, all right, we actually did start increasing military spending once Trudeau got into
Yeah.
office.
I
Like,
heard it's
Harper cut
back.
it down so badly.
It was below 1% GDP, but they back.
Yeah.
What was that called when they back write it? So like, so it's 2 billion up front, 10 billion down the line type thing.
Hmm.
But anyway, we definitely need to upgrade our military. I don't like. I'm not a big proponent of military spending. I think
I think that the 2% commitment we made to NATO is the adequate amount to be putting into it.
yeah, even then, like, why do we need to be putting in 2% of our GDP if the USA is putting in $200 billion into their
My
military?
question is like our
Why can't we
GDP is
just
like
pay the
bigger than like
USA?
almost any other country in NATO's.
Yeah, why
So
can't we
like
just
I
say
mean,
scratch it? Scratch it. Let's just say scratch it. We'll go to 1%. We'll go to 0.5% of our GDP, but we'll give the other bit of the money to the USA. You can control everything. Go ahead.
in my personal opinion, the fact that we've been supporting NATO has been our 2% of GDP.
As what?
That's been our 2% of GDP. And it's been a good defense protocol to just
Yeah,
help
the 2%'s not that bad.
Ukraine.
I
Like
mean, it just
helping
doesn't make
Ukraine
sense.
is
Yeah.
defense because it is
I'm a
against Russia.
big fan of the whole supporting Ukraine and spending the money in the right place. But I just don't think that it's necessary for a place like Canada to be spending 2% of our GDP if our neighbor is the single largest military entity since the creation of time. Like
Well,
we're
I mean,
partners.
our neighbor might be our enemy very shortly,
Yeah,
so.
our neighbor's threatening to go against us, so it's kind of like
I mean, like,
maybe
I honestly don't think that we should depend on our neighbor ever again. I think if it was up to me, I would just block them off, join the EU, and start a free
I
trade
think
agreement with China.
they're talking
I
about
don't
all of
think
those
I don't think
things.
it's our neighbors that want us to be the
That's
51st
right.
state.
That's right.
I think it's our neighbor, just the one.
Yeah,
Yeah. Well, it's not just.
I did say our neighbor, so.
Yeah, but the United States isn't just Donald Trump, right? Like
I
yeah,
know, but there's a lot of
73
people
million
that
people.
No,
live
but
in
Donald Trump is in control of their country, and or he will be very shortly, and he is a
There's,
complete wild card who wants to take over the world. So we do
I
need to
don't
keep that in
disagree.
mind.
Like him and Putin want to split up a lot, but like he still has to get Congress and the Senate to sign off on more.
and they
And,
will.
and at no, they won't. And as a person who ran on a no war campaign, I don't know how that'll go over with the people in the United States.
Well,
I
he's
do
probably
believe.
just gonna threaten everybody and scare the crap out of them until they give in.
Yeah, well, I mean, they did. There's some guy named Stanley who was. I was listening to a podcast. This guy Stanley was part of the administration for Joe Biden and negotiation team before that, and became Joe Biden's defense secretary, John Stanley or something like that. And he was talking about Donald Trump and the way he negotiates, the way people understand how he negotiates, and we all know that he doesn't want to invade Canada per se, but like the things that he might want are going to be like a North American or an American currency, like a European Union currency, and he's going to want access to the Northwestern Passage for Russia, an open passage for trade. That's what he's trying to do, and Mexico knows this, and so I think Mexico can kind of like take a step back and say, well, we're not Panama and we're not Canada, and that's why, you know.
That's always been the long game plan, and they played this long game plan really, really, really well. It was always a plan to come after those and get our shipping canals and get them back. But
Judicial branch and the executive order to dissolve the Senate. And then he can make an executive order to go to war.
I mean, that would be NATO immediately coming in to save our
And
asses,
you
but
know
like,
who it would be China. That would
Well,
be
yeah,
in that moment that would be our
it
biggest
would be
ally,
China.
China.
Yeah, no, exactly. And China is like so for it. They've already proposed a free trade agreement with Canada. They were like,
I
hey guys,
well, I
we're here
just
for
read
this.
up. There's two current. Well, right now we're pro-rogue, but there was two current free trade agreements that were close to being signed. One was with China, and one was with India. India obviously is suspended like last year or whatever, but like
Yeah.
China was close, and it would have been a
Did we
big.
not have some sort of again, as most people know, I don't know a whole lot about it, but I have to ask some questions. Did Canada not already have some agreements and like trade shit with China like back in like the
We have trade deals.
2000s?
We have hundreds of trade deals with China, but
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
but most of them are private sector, if I'm not mistaken. You know, like just
Yeah,
whatever.
and I think we do have tariffs on China because China kind of like pulled themselves into a
Yeah,
particular situation. You know, I mean, when you don't ever buy from anybody else, it kind of does lead to you, you know, being in a position that you were in. But like, I mean, honestly,
oh, yeah.
like I would be for like
Well,
I would be for it,
you
honestly.
don't have to. You don't have to approve that. I just want. I noticed you're a private account. Sorry.
Uh, did you follow me or something?
Yeah, I just clicked the button and it said whatever.
Well, I mean, I mean, it's, yeah, I don't usually accept anybody
Yeah,
at
that's
this
fine.
point,
I
but
understand 100%. Like I just
I'm thinking about making a different account where I just
I
don't
did the
have
same
like all
thing.
of my wedding videos on it.
I did the same thing. I have two different accounts after this one.
You know,
But
I've for
I would be
50,
for the China
50
trade deal as well. I think that it's smart to make those kinds of deals.
honestly, I would be for having an embargo on the states.
Yeah,
I think that at this point
you'd be for an
they need it.
embargo against the United States.
Yes,
Ooh,
I think
that's a
that
matter
they
of
are
national
too
security,
volatile.
though. That's a national
They are
security issue,
so
isn't it?
volatile at this point. If they get, well, I mean, they're against Canada, right? They want to take us over. I would be pro
Only half of
embargoing
them.
them with all of NATO.
Half of them want to join us. Half of them want to, take us over. So I think we use that to
Yeah.
our advantage, right? Like we'll be insulated by,
Uh, yeah, that is true.
and then they got enough stuff going on down there with the internal like turmoil. I don't know, man. Like if they
It's just that most of the minerals that come from us that they buy go into their defense,
and
right?
we give them
If
at
we
a
don't give
really
it to them,
yeah.
they cannot increase their defense at
Well, no,
all, which would be
they
good
said
because
today.
China also has an embargo on them
They
at
said
that point.
today
They're
that
not.
somebody said today that they could replace every mineral that we get from them, or that they get from us.
Who was it? Like Venezuela or something?
No, internally.
So Sojin is saying we can't do an embargo versus the USA unless we
Yeah, no,
drastically.
that is the thing. We would definitely have to really drastically
We did
diversify our trade
diversify.
and economy. And
We
I
did
do think that we do need to diversify our economy
a
to
hundred
catch up with
percent.
it.
That's what we did under the Trudeau administration. Thank you very much for the. Even though I wasn't really for it, but apparently now the Trans-Pacific Partnership is a good one.
Yeah.
And then we
Yeah.
got that. We signed a trade agreement with Indonesia, which is a huge market, an emerging market. We're signing deals with India for LNG, even though it's not Qatari prices, but whatever. Then we have obviously European Union trade arrangements. That's why we keep the carbon tax. So like we're diversifying all the time. That's why Christian Freeland was so successful. That's why this administration was so successful.
I
You
like
know,
what
my whole life, all I have, been taught and all I've assumed is that the United States of America and Canada were, partners. And although we had our separate identities, we always worked together. And it just basically takes one asshole to stir the shit pot, and all of a sudden,
Unfortunately.
everything's just going fucking off the rails because of one
Yeah.
person. When for generations now, it's always been in my mind that we're two countries that support each other, and we always have. Whether we take the short end of the stick or we give the short end of the stick, we've always kind of worked together. And all of a sudden now, with one guy and one comment and one attitude and one perspective, everything's going to shit for no reason.
My
Well,
father's a trade.
he's incited a lot of support for this idea as well.
even amongst his supporters though, like they're divided about like war, right? Like that was his prime, one of his big things was, no war Trump, like never before, right? Like, so I think that would be difficult for him to rally the support within his own group. Somebody actually corrected me already on this, so it's fine. I'm wrong again. But that's cool. You get this one. Person in the comments.
All right, so I've spent enough time on the same panel with Butters. I got shit to do.
Aw. Oh, come on.
I'm actually, believe it or not, I'm actually at work, and I really do have stuff to do. But Mrs. R, Mama R, I appreciate you letting me come up. I love talking shit with people, even though I don't understand most of the stuff you're talking about.
You're lying. You understand more. I've
I
heard those
appreciate you.
conversations. Don't be.
Yeah, I understand a little bit. Anyways, I appreciate you letting me come up. I love the conversation, and everybody have yourself a great evening. Thank you.
You too.
You
Take
too,
care.
Vax.
Be really cool if I got Vax and PG to come to my house and do my garage with me.
Ooh, that would be cool.
Let's build a tiny home.
That would be kind of sick, eh?
Yeah. Hi. What's up, buddy? What?
I
What
saw
is-
this
Is
guy
that your
from
pupper?
Toronto.
No, this is my
I-
Portuguese water dog.
I saw this guy from Toronto, and he made tiny homes attached to bicycles
Of course, beer.
for
Oh, why not? That's
Bicycles?
Yeah,
Really?
it is. It's really cool. It's like this little box. It's really lightweight metal, I guess, and it's lined. And you get inside, and it has like a little camper bed, kind of couch style. And if you lift it up, it has like a camping toilet in there,
Oh yeah.
and a space to put your clothes. And it has like a little kitchen in there,
Very
and like a
cool.
little counter. They would just need to worry about where they could keep it.
They have these tiny homes, man. They're like so comfy and cozy. Like I remember a time when I was single and not doing so good. I would have totally rented one of those out while I got my shit together.
I feel kind of stupid, I'm one of those 80s kids, right? And I wish I had a thought about this back then.
Yeah.
I just didn't even think that that was a possibility, right? Or I would have been all about it. And I have the privilege of going to camps with unhoused people and seeing what they're doing. And I got to tell you, some of those people are just knocking it out of the park. Just no pun intended, actually. But I mean, like 6-foot privacy fences. They've got
Oh yeah.
cameras, so nobody can get in. They've got their buddy heaters. Like, yeah, some of those people, it's not because they're lazy that they don't have houses.
And the
They go
generators.
work.
Okay, enough. Go ahead.
Yep.
Well, not on me, bro. Gotcha.
It's me, I'm her. If you saw them and you remember the creator, can you DM me? I'm trying to find them. I'm going to bring it to my town council and see if we can start making them for our population.
The rich kids had in the '80s. Yeah, I remember that. I had a,
Right?
I went to a private school when I was in the States, and so we're not wealthy, and we could not afford that school, but it's part of the Canadian government protocol to put like diplomats' kids in private schools.
Oh, you were a military brat too?
Diplomat. Um,
I
and
know a few people that went up there to school.
so where most military would be in Lars, I was in Bonn.
Yeah. I actually have a friend that went up that way.
Yeah, I was born in Bonn. And what was I saying?
So you went to private school,
What were we talking about just before that?
tiny homes.
Oh,
People
right.
thought it
And
was,
my friend. So like while I was there, I was hanging out with my buddy, and it was his birthday. La da 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 da. And his dad was some rich lawyer, and I lived out in the country, so I was staying at his house for the weekend because whatever, you can't get back into the city, right? And he's got this boat. We're going out on the boat, and his dad comes out and he goes, "That's yours now. I'm building another one." And so he had this boathouse. It was like pretty close to the size of my house and longer, and it had like this big boat in it and all this fishing gear. I looked at it, I was like, "What do you mean that's yours?" He's like, yeah, my dad's building another one. I was like, holy Moses, man, like unbelievable. I am an '80s kid. Yeah, but like, I mean, like that was a different level of wealthy. I could never fathom, even to
Yeah.
this day, like waking up in a house like that. Like, imagine.
No. I lived on the base. We had tiny houses, you know, humble upbringing, but a good, safe upbringing, like living on the military base. It was really cool.
We
We
were in
lived in Edmonton, so Michael J. Fox actually went to my school. He was like 4 years, graded out before I went there.
Oh yeah,
Yeah,
that's cool.
I just aged myself incredibly.
You're
That's
my age.
okay. Can't you tell?
Is it bad that Generation X has like the youngest person here being 31 years old?
Oh, that's awesome. Means we're in
No,
the right
me.
place.
Hmm?
Means we're in the right place.
Yeah. I mean, me and my husband are like I'm a little bit disabled, but like eventually we're working on getting me treatment so that like I'm functional again because we really, really want to do the whole having kids thing. But it's like expensive.
Oh
And if
my
Yeah.
I'm
god.
not able to go back to work, like there's a
Ridiculous.
real concern about whether or not that's a feasible option.
UBI.
Yeah, no kidding, hey?
Right?
Yeah.
I don't know.
UBI does seem like the next natural option when they're giving computers all our jobs.
Look, at the Maxi across the street, my goodness,
What, you need a walk, eh? Is that what you want? You want to
they've
go
got
for a
like
walk?
six, I think, automated little scan things. I
Mm-hmm.
never go through them because I just don't believe that that I have to do the job of another employee for this company so that they can pay less employees. It just makes me so angry.
Well, they said that even Bill Gates and Sam Altman, like they're capitalists. There's they're ultra capitalist, right? But Bill Gates is talking about the necessity of a UBI, GBI kind of guaranteed income because of automation and AI. He's like, get used to it. Get used to a 3 day work week, 3 10-hour days. That's what you're getting.
Yeah, I totally expect that. Radical was showing me this graph of corporations and how, there's no more money to take from the consumer.
Oh yeah,
Like we're
Well,
tapped
the
out,
I
and that's
saw
why
I,
they're
saw- I
going into
saw
government
I saw
money.
a stat that the wealth disparity that we see right now is akin to the Russian Revolution
Oh, really?
or the French Revolution, one of the two. Yeah,
yeah, it's not good.
no, no. And then you got a bunch of like
Germany has, I think it's Germany that has this, but there's a couple other countries that have this as well. But it's at the beginning of the year, whatever the inflation is, they just adjust your salary to it
they're
every
supposed to
single
do that
year.
here.
That's
They're,
the law.
they're supposed to do that here, but they only adjust to minimum wage, not
They
like
only
everybody's
adjust to
wage.
minimum wage. It's crazy. Like, and they don't even do that if we're
No.
going to be
The
completely
big
real about
issue,
it.
the big issue here, really, to be fair, and if I was to say anything bad about the Liberal Party, where I was disappointed in the last couple of years, would be that we didn't attack the grocery store monopolies and
Yeah.
collusions and price gouging. I think we should have been more aggressive, and people would have been a lot more forgiving about other things like the carbon tax.
100%. I would have loved to have seen the grocery trains maybe federalize it. I I think
That's
Yeah,
what I
they
was saying too.
like have their own grocery store where they just keep the
Well, they
prices
should
low
federalize
because
all amenities, like one of everything across the board, so it sets a base level. So, like, you know,
yeah,
heat,
I think we
electric,
should take Post Canada back as a
of
service.
course,
yes,
I
yes.
don't think that it should be a crown corporation. Nobody needs that many VPs, okay? No one needs 23 VPs.
and the corporate lobby too. That's a good one. I
And all those vehicles they have sitting in parking lots not using them. They
I have
push
nothing to
the
say about
the
that.
strike and cause the chaos.
Yeah, it's
Who
deplorable
did?
and
For what?
I lobbied my MP about it, and she did not even return a single one of my calls.
For which?
There's the strike. We're talking about Canada
About the
Post.
strike.
Oh,
Like I called her like 7 times about it. I was like, do not fucking touch this.
whenever we
Let them
talk
do
about
their
the
thing.
Canada, whenever we talk about the Canada Post strike, I would like to point out that the workers offered 3-day work weeks during negotiations, but they were locked out uh,
Yeah,
by like whoever whatever entity owns
yeah. They,
the
they they
food.
they they didn't want to have to be striking during Christmas. This was not ever their plan.
This could have been solved in October. The owners wanted, or the corporation wanted to push it to the end, to Christmas, so that they could
Oh,
do this.
they knew that they would be in a good position where they would be able to force Canada's hand and that the public would be outraged, which they
Yeah.
were because it was a
Exploiting
really
this.
rough time.
Yeah, they were appealing to emotion. Like, look at these guys. You know they get paid well enough. You know they have full time work. Are you
I was
struggling?
like,
You know they're not
guys,
struggling. They have a union. They have health benefits. Do you have health benefits? Why are they striking? If you don't have any of these things and they have these things, what makes them better than you? And then everybody's like, no shit. What makes them better than me? And then that's the public outrage. Like I
Yep.
don't know.
Yep.
It's easy to engineer outrage and point the finger.
Oh,
And
yeah.
so easy.
I think that like when we talk about minimum wage, it really just brings me back to the fact that like minimum wage was always supposed to be like the amount that you need to raise a family as a single person working 40 hours a week.
Yeah.
Like that was what minimum wage was supposed to be. I don't know when people have started considering it the starting wage for teenagers, but that
yeah,
was not what that
exactly.
was. Like my grandfather, he did like whittling. He basically made the left leg of every kitchen chair you could have possibly sat on in Canada for the longest time. But like he was doing that 40 hours a week, and he raised his 3 kids on that. And, he had a house and he was able to do all that while his wife didn't work.
And
Like,
there's
she didn't need
no
to
difference.
because that was the way that things worked. And it's like today, you can barely survive on minimum wage.
But that's
Well,
because
most
Like,
people have to have 2 or 3 jobs, right?
like
of
you
the
have to have
impact, though,
dual
right?
income in your household. Like,
Like,
it's
oh
crazy to
yeah, for
me.
sure. Well, we're single income here, and we're getting by on. Yeah, well, I mean, she makes good money, but not that great.
We I have 2 jobs and Radical has a job. Well,
Yeah,
we
well, I
did
have a
this
job
year, to
now.
be
Like, I
fair.
usually work about 8 months out of the year.
Yeah.
This year, I'll probably work a little more. But like,
Yeah, if I didn't
you
have
know,
my
it,
insurance,
it's
it'd be a lot tougher.
to be fair, it's a lot. Not to be fair, that's an unfair statement. Um, Full disclosure, like we kind of knew that my son had autism, but we never got diagnosed. Um, so we had, our whole like, hey, guess what? You were right moment this year, and like it's a
How old
lot.
is he? How
Eight,
old is he?
eight.
8. Okay. You're
Yeah. So
still in a good spot, right?
oh yeah,
Because
Yeah, it could have
autism
been much later.
interventions, I used to
it is.
teach for quite a few years in Alberta. And it's still like there's so many good supports out there that he can utilize to build him up.
Here now, like we got access to so much support. Plus, we tapped into Jordan's principle. So the
Right.
school, and mostly like it's the school that gets the support, right? Like they get to call in like EAs and all these extra staffers and stuff like that. And really, the stress has really been lifted. Like we're not bad parents anymore. Like it's like because you try and still like those emotional regulations aren't there, so you're confused. Like, why is he acting like this? Well, he's a little hyper. I'm just like, wait, they used to say that about me.
I'd love you to
Oh
meet this
yeah,
fella.
that
His name is David Loist, and he created the reference and regulation program. I believe he is out of Vancouver Island. But he is amazing, and you guys should check him out and see if you can just utilize a little bit of your funding for him, because my son didn't speak, and they called it selective mutism for many years. And I'll tell you, I had given up on the fact that he would speak.
Oh my
And
god.
one day, in grade 5, I'm thinking he's never going to speak, and I'm in this. Every autism mom will understand, or parent, sorry, will understand this moment. But I've given up. I'm sitting in the car. He's by himself, looking outside. I'm just checked out, looking outside. It's very quiet, and then out of nowhere, he says, "The sky is blue.
The sky is blue?
The sky is blue." His first words ever.
Oh my god, you must have
I,
lost it.
I, I lost. I'm jumping out. The sky is blue. The sky is
Yeah.
blue.
I'm like, oh shit. Right. Yeah, no, that's, yeah. Yeah, you know, when my son started seeing that the psychologist this year, like it was a breakthrough moment for him. He's like, I'm not messed up. You know, it was really good, really good.
I'm
And
really glad you guys are working on that. And, as parents, it's so hard. We beat ourselves up. We think we're supposed to have all the answers and figure it out. And, we're just learning too.
it was night and day, just like that, like a flip of a switch. And we didn't lose any of his personality. None of his joy was gone. Nothing. Like his youthful exuberance and his innocence was still there. Um, he was just able to interact better with people. He was able to interact at school better, more appropriately. No more physical violence. He's able to deal with bullies without getting angry. Like all of these regulating things that don't happen without therapy, that don't happen without some kind of intervention, is yeah, it's a lot.
It is. If you ever want to chat, hit me up. I'd love to talk about it.
Oh, I'll
Um,
always talk about it. I'll always talk about it, especially on my awareness is key. You know.
it's an important topic.
Yeah. Oh
It
yeah.
really is. I have a brother who has autism and my
Oh,
goddaughter as well. So
yeah.
yeah.
The thing is my stepdaughter is and my wife are neurotypical, and so with my stepdaughter growing up with my son, she's like, I have no idea what's going on. I can't keep up. And like it got to be a lot, but she come around now because like life, right? But yeah, being around neurotypical people as neurodivergent person, and then you realize what's going on with them as you're dealing with your shit. You're just like, holy, like really is like having another child for my wife sometimes, you know. Yeah, he's medicated. I just got medicated last year, Zoo. Like I think I'm on my third third bottle, so 3 months.
Is he asking you if you're medicated? Are they asking you if you're medicated, or
You
your
can.
son?
I don't know. Maybe she's asking for either. I don't know. We're both medicated now. He's on like a small dose. I'm on a pretty big one. I'm on 40 milligrams of Vyvanse, generic.
Sometimes I had one person ask me once if you could change your son, would you? Just a typical. And my son has so much joy, I couldn't imagine
He has no
ever.
sense of humor.
No,
Yeah,
no.
no. And we were so hesitant about the medication too because we didn't want to lose anything of his personality. My
Yep.
my mother was against it. My mother still says like, you're a normal kid. You were a normal kid, Jeremy. You're a normal kid all the way through. You're normal now. You don't, you're just unique. You just had high
Yeah,
energy, right? Like
look at her.
Yeah, there's a certain level of denial that some grandparents have about it, where they just don't want
It's
to accept the
of
fact
course you
that,
would.
like,
it's scary. When I had my son, I didn't want him in a box, and I had years of
yeah.
teaching behind me that was sitting right in front of me, showing me that he was probably on the spectrum. And you know
Yeah.
who said to me, it was radical. He looked at me and he's like, "What are you doing? You know better. You are seeing this right in front of you and you're scared.
Yeah.
That's why you're not
Oh, I
doing
was
anything."
terrified. I
I
was
was
terrified. Like, what can I do? What am I going to be able to do? Like, have I failed? Is it my fault? Like, all of it. Like,
I was terrified to put him in a box too.
yeah,
I didn't want him to be stuck in this box that he would never get out of.
you can't blame yourself.
Yeah.
So, yeah, don't blame yourself.
That's not fair. It doesn't help anybody.
And the other side, like, it gets so much better
Yeah,
as you get
It
older.
does.
It does. You see,
night and day.
You know, my brother's in his 40s now. We recently have discovered a new way to hug. Like my brother hugged me for the first time, like a real, we actually hugged for real and not just like he put his arm around me and he sheepishly like held
Mm.
away from me. And
yeah,
it was just like a moment where I was like, hey man, I would like if maybe when we hugged, like both of our shoulders touch and like that would be like so nice for me. And then he did it and he was like, wow, that was really nice. And I was just like, I know, it really, really was nice. He'd never given me a hug in that way until I requested it in that way because for him it just was not like he doesn't know it's not his language, right? But it was just kind of a really like sweet moment for both him and I. It was kind of a breakthrough for both of us.
I love that.
It's
My son couldn't kiss. Kissing was really hard for him. Like it's wet, it's messy, it's personal, it's all of those things. And it took a long time, but we negotiated the can you give me some sugar? And sometimes sugar was a high five, and sometimes sugar was just a touch on my cheek, but it was just a little bit of sugar. And I'm good with that.
my son's like that too. My wife has to ask. So, like, not always. Like, he's very loving. Like, always hugging and hugging and hugging. But sometimes he hyper focuses, and because he's so loving and affectionate all the time, when he's not, it's kind of noticeable, right? And you you're like, what's up, man? Something wrong? Oh, nothing, nothing, nothing. My wife's like, give me a hug. And she'll go in and just like, yeah, it's great.
I
I
love
love it.
that.
Yeah, there's nothing. I had my son at 40, so it was a little late, and I was like, "Is it good? It's good. It's the most rewarding thing I've ever done. Seriously, best choice I've ever made. And he was a choice, so that makes it even, because I don't. A lot of my stuff was reactionary, so like I'm not getting into but whatever. You know what I mean? So, anyways, love you guys. Thanks for hosting again. Love your stuff. I gotta go. My dog's panicking
Thank you
here.
so much. I think with that, we are going to end tonight. It was a fabulous conversation. It just this beautiful spectrum of conversation's been awesome. I really appreciate everyone.
Yeah, thanks for having me, and I'll pop off as well.
And it's been nice getting to know you. I hope I get to know you more, Pumpkin Spice.
Me too, for sure. I've been really enjoying you guys being on 5 nights a week. This has been very fun.
Ah, thanks. I really appreciate it. We're working hard and trying to grow this space for all of us. So thank you so much. Take care. Thanks everybody for joining us. We appreciate you all. I hope you all had a beaver slapping tail time. That didn't come out right. Anyways, have a good evening. Take care, everyone.